give me the pleasure to join with you today to talk about a different perspective. I think after Paul's interesting talk, he's already highlighted a number of things. If, even as an able-bodied person, to get around, the connectivity, all that is not so good in Hong Kong. Just imagine if you were in a wheelchair. I don't see any wheelchair users here, right? There are no wheelchair users here, right? There are no vision impaired persons here. There are no blind person here. I came here this morning. I also walked here this morning. If I was coming, which I did, I came from our Tau Gok station. If you're in a wheelchair, can you imagine the route? So what's happening? What is this connectivity? This is my approach. This is the way I think we should look at it. I think we are looking at it still very, very narrowly, from very, very straight angle, very, very tightrope. Okay, we plan cities. All of you are planners of various forms. We built for society, and we design for people. Let's not forget that. I certainly don't design for cars. A number of you do, because obviously there are good reasons to design for cars well and properly. But let's look at where we're coming from as a profession. What is our responsibility? What are we doing? Do we just design for the young, the fit and the able? What happened to the older ones, the less able and the fit, and people with disabilities? Or is it all of the above? I believe it should be all of the above. Looking at Paul's study, a lot of the stuff is highly disconnected. You can't, as a wheelchair person, you can't, as a blind person, get around the city very, very well at all. What is the reason? And it's not something we try to do in Hong Kong. It's been happening quite some time. The United Nations came out with the new convention, basically, on rights of persons with disabilities. It took them 5 years to build, to discuss, consult on this particular document. So back in 2006, it was adopted by the General Assembly, and 2008 it came to force. And this is a very powerful piece of instrument, legal instrument, even though it's unenforceable in a way. It relies on the responsibility of states, parties, for the countries to adopt this. And basically, very simply says, it prohibits discrimination against PWDs in all areas of life. They're all people just like you and I. Okay. Very quickly, a couple of articles talks about universal design. Article 9 talks about accessibility, and Article 30 talks about participation in cultural life, recreation, leisure, and sports. This is what it's all about. We want to get in the street. We want to enjoy ourselves, not get stuck in some corner. Very quickly, Article 9 basically just, the countries need to do things in order to let them live quite independently and participate. The countries must do things. And that's why Hong Kong government over the last few years probably is doing more, because not because we want to, because I think China is doing it, because China is a signatory, Hong Kong isn't. So Hong Kong and Macau are actually following a number of things because what China needs to do. Who did we design for? This is only a sector of the population, not all of us here. This is a sector of population which we tend to neglect and forget. Okay? The latest WHO figure says 50% of the population has some sort of disability. Okay? Now the figure has come up to 1 billion people. That's a lot of people, almost the size of China or India. Okay? And 80% of those live in the developing country, which is around our region also. The other group of people we should be looking at dealing with are the elderly. I think the previous speakers already mentioned. Look at some of the figures here. For Asia, for instance, even though we're not fast as Japan, Japan already know they have problems a long time ago, 20, 30 years ago. That's why they're designing for the silver society, in the transportation, in the buildings. They're way ahead in the design. That's why they produce so many good things. Asia, we're following up fairly closely there. China, by 2050, 30% of the people will be 60 years and above. Obviously, we're all going to be in this age group. It's our cities designed and planned so that we can still go out and use it equally well. Not so at the moment. Okay. These are the Hong Kong laws. We have the DDO. We don't. It's a very interesting instrument also, which gives them the right to do things, and equal opportunity was set up to implement, to monitor this. Don't go into the standard guidelines, you all know this, and building regulation, building planning regulation, transit regulation, all this is part of it. Recently, I think DAST has produced a particular document, Universal Access for External Areas, Open Spaces and Green Spaces. This is still very much a guidance document. I believe some of the projects now, government projects need to at least make a reference to it, and you need to tick the box, UA, but how well do we implement it? This is another thing we need to look at. But at least it's something about universal access. And when we design for universal access for pedestrian environment, a number of constraints we looked at. Topography, Hong Kong is obviously quite different to a place that's nice and flat. Safety, convenience, the balance of the needs. Environment is what I'd like to talk about today. Motorized, non-motorized transport, and of course, protection of roadworks even. Pedestrian access ways, we talked about access routes. Very, very important. I think some of the slides previously, the access routes are blocked because of whatever's outside in the streets. Okay, the garbage, the signage, whatever. It's not well planned, not well designed. Level change is very important about footbridges, subways. You're a wheelchair user. That's a barrier, first thing. Okay, you have a lot of street, and good street crossing. Paul mentioned, that's a terrible street crossing. We can do better. I'm sure we can borrow from Japan to see what can be done. Surface materials, obviously, we don't consider very much, but very important. Street furniture, seating. We'll talk about that in a minute. Tactile paving, etc. And lastly, information and communication. How can our environment improve from that so a blind person or anybody, a tourist, can travel much easier? Very important, I think, the connectivity. Previous speakers have mentioned it. In terms of a wheelchair user, as a blind person, how effective is that connectivity? Okay, can I walk outside? Can I get to the nearest MTR station? Is it well connected? It's not well connected. If I'm a blind person, can I get there equally well? We must look at the seamless transition. Things must be seamless. Very, very simply, a rubbish bin already stopped my transition. I can't get around. How interactive is the place? Interface of one to another, one transportation to another, one built environment to another, and the interface of built environment and transportation and your road system. Okay, what we really need is an accessible continuation of this travel chain. The barriers, no doubt, we know what barriers are. That is a barrier. That is also a barrier. Okay, crossing the street, you can't do it. It's a pedestrian walkway. If you're pushing a pram, where do you go from there? Where do you go from there? All these. Okay, I don't need to tell you what the problems are. Okay, if you're pushing a pram in a wheelchair, can you do that? Okay, this is meant to be a friendly interface of one service to another. Terrible. This is more close to home. That sort of paving in an outdoor environment. That sort of pedestrian crossing. If you're in a wheelchair, your wheels may get caught in that. You're pushing a pram, you may get caught in this sort of situations. Of course, that's a problem. And the access route, it could be blocked. You have footpaths, but someone's put in a meter or this sort of thing. Totally inaccessible. Closer to home again, spoon drains. Look at this one. Can you all see this picture? Someone's very cleverly putting it around. Okay? What's the problem? What is the problem? Where is the problem? Are we really thinking? You know? Are we thinking? What are we thinking? And this one. Give you 2 seconds. What are the 3 barriers you can see there? 1, 2, 3. Is that a very friendly park entrance? Can you go there with your pram? Can you go there in a wheelchair? No. And therefore, this poor guy, we're talking about road safeties. This guy's completely denied access on where he should be, on the pedestrian walkway, sidewalks. He's been pushed in the street. We have this in Hong Kong also. We also have this in Asian cities. Look at this. It's a barrier to the visually impaired. Okay? Can you see there are steps here? Can you see there are steps here? 1, 2, 3. Can you see there are steps here? Can you count the number of steps here? Can you imagine? This in the evening, with low lighting. You, I, my grandmother, would you let her go down there without a handrail? So these are the macro stuff. We talk about micro, we talk about designing, planning, etc. But is this the solution? Universal design is the solution. Ron Mays has this definition of universal design. It's the design of products, environments, to be usable by all people to the greatest extent possible. Okay? It's not one solution for everybody, but to the greatest extent possible, usable by all people. That's the way we're going. We don't design anymore exclusively for wheelchair users or people with permanent disabilities. We design for all people. This is where the concept of universal design comes in. Once again, that's the group we work designing to. We don't concentrate on this alone, which the design manual currently addresses. A bit on the visual impaired and hearing impaired, but we are designing, we can design for all this. And research have shown if you do a universal accessible design, 40% of the population will benefit. Not those 5 or 2% of wheelchair users. 40% will benefit. Accessible environment, very quickly goes to this. That's what we're looking for. That's what we want to do. That's what we want to do. That's what we want to do. That is an accessible environment. That's Japan. And that's even Macau. Okay? Allow electric buggies to go out in the street. That's giving this person independence to go shopping, to go around wherever you like. Okay? Without relying on somebody else. Japan has really good examples of accessible open spaces, public spaces, from connecting from the station across to the street, Yokohama City. You can see how well defined the streets are, how well wayfinding is put in for a blind person. Wonderful street systems, clearly marked bicycle lanes, separated pedestrian walkways, tactile information that takes you right through to wherever you like to go. Once again, beautiful. It is quite pleasant to look at an environment like this, to say everybody can use this, everybody can appreciate the street. And even the bus stops, very simple bus shelters. And the guiding paths take you to a bus stop, so if you're a blind person, takes you to a bus stop, there's shelter there provided for you, and even takes you right across into the building by maps, which everybody can use. These are not maps for the blind. That's not maps just for certain people. We can all use this map. Guidance system if needed, and a good way of planting trees, not haphazardly. So you'll always have a clear, accessible route for whoever needs it, whoever needs it. This is what I call a livable city, livable street. Paul, we should do more of this. What are you doing, Paul? This is what we want, right? These are people sitting. Look at this environment. You can have a smoke there, whatever you like. But this is what we're looking for, isn't it? This is what we want. All this. If Japan can do it, why can't Hong Kong? And the seamless interface. Really quite seamless, crossing streets, road levels, without all this curbing, impeding you, stopping you from doing anything. And the interface between footpath to buildings quite smooth and quite easy. Of course, we have this system, which is wonderful. And even in their footbridges, they provide provisions for the blind to be able to read in Braille and in raised letters to communicate to the person you're going up, down, or whatever. This is to the footbridges. Singapore even is doing quite good in the new areas. I hope our new towns can be equally good. Singapore used to be behind us. Now that I think that certain areas of Singapore are ahead of us in terms of accessibility. Great streets in Vienna, what they're providing is information for the blind person across the street. Mapping system, very simple. Once again here, mapping system. In order to help the blind person cross the street, in Berlin, well-defined footpaths, bicycle lanes, and street crossings. Fairly good. Down to Australia, once again, Sydney, wonderful city for outdoor life. Universally accessible, nice and cheap way of providing information. Street information in Braille and tactile letters, everybody can use. I can read it, you can use it, and a blind person can use it. Good street crossings, well-defined street crossings, colorful, color contrasting, accessible. Raised crossing, which I like very much in Hong Kong. I think the raised street crossings will not only reduce the cars, but it gives you level access across from one pedestrian sidewalk to the next. I'd like to see more of this in Hong Kong, I think. The countdowns, I don't know why we don't have countdowns in Hong Kong yet. Pedestrian for streets, for cars, as well as for pedestrians. It really is, if you hit the remote control, it does give you the extra time if you need it, in pushing a pram, taking your luggage and in a wheelchair across our street. Quickly, we can't exclude anymore, we can't discriminate people anymore. Those people are physically challenged or less able. Universal design must be inclusive and accessible. I think a pedestrian environment must be going towards its direction. Some of the inaccessible facilities versus accessible facilities. This is in Shenzhen, totally accessible, universally designed. Berlin's a good example of really nice products in universal design. Telephone booths, a range of telephone booths, different options. nicely designed for anyone who's tall, short, wheelchair user. Anybody can use this system. And even better still, e-information. This kiosk provides a phone, internet, city information, all within this little gadget. Talk about public toilets. Why don't we have more public toilets, which are universally accessible? Wheelchair users and universally in different languages as well. Where are they all? Seating, all mentioned. Why don't we have more seating for older person? These are various facilities we can designing a tactile map, universal map that can be read by a blind person so he and she can actually appreciate what the park looks like without seeing it. He and she can still read the information that is a map used by all people. Interface between transportation to buildings, very important. From building to transportation systems, do we have that interface, interchange? An example in Japan, from that building, they can take you right from the train station all the way through a covered walkway, 2 maps, lead you to the particular building entrance where he or she can go right in, even the maps inside the building. So this is a seamless thing. We're approaching an aging society in Japan, and that's why about 20 years ago, they started retrofitting all the subway stations. We tend to forget pedestrian walkways. Subways are also pedestrian systems, not only stuff above ground. 1 minute left. So the connectivity, getting the blind person to get to their own machines, getting right through the pedestrian subway, right up to the mapping system itself, and takes you right up to the lift, and eventually out of the system without assistance, but provided you have a good infrastructure put in. Paris start looking at low-floor buses. They have bus stops. This is the bus stop in Berlin with this gadget. Now, once again, good seats. We have good bus stops, good seats, and this 3 and 4 and all gadget, which you can use many things for. I like this particular system in Paris. You can see very simple. Use a stand to show you where the bus stops are, what buses are coming through these particular lines. That line is which are accessible, etc. And it gives you real time. Tells you the next line, next station, the next bus will come in 11 minutes or next 25 minutes, and these lines are accessible. So why can't we do this in Hong Kong? It's always complained about, oh, we have too many high-rise buildings, the GPS doesn't work. I wonder. The bus systems they are doing there for Paris are looking at the connection between the bus stop to the sidewalk. So they are building the raised crossings. I think this could be done better, but they're attempting a raised crossing to get you off the street up to the Champs-Élysées. Transportation, important, time out. Okay, taxis. Taxis, accessible taxis. We have accessible taxis. Accessible cars. The interface of that we must have good parking stops. Get people in and out of the cars, whether they're drivers or transportation, water transportation. Always forget too, we have a lot of water transportation in Hong Kong, in Asia. How well is the internet connection between South Ferry and those outlying island ferries? How easy, accessible they are. As in here, that is totally accessible. Okay, information, finally, information communication technology. Many, many things invented in Japan. We can use IT to help a person navigate the streets. Let's look into that. You don't want to be that person. You want to be that person. Sydney, you want to be out in the street? In the streets? That's what livable city is all about. We have all the guidelines in the world. We need international pictograms that's in really relying languages. And this is what the other things we build in Hong Kong. This is a guide path. If you're a blind person, you would not want to use this. Right? What's happening? Where's our professional going? Are we just designing for the developer? I don't know who designed these things. Who put these things in, you know? This is a fairly upmarket housing. Not this housing court, whatever. Yeah. Finally, I'm beginning to see better things happening here. This is at the UK. We want this. We want accessibility that's good for everybody, a bridge that's usable for everybody. We want to get everybody out there. Finally, I'd like to say, hopefully, I don't want to be too specific on the word walkable. If you're a wheelchair user, you don't walk, okay? Let's call it universally accessible city. A living city, I like to extend it just to the streets to go at the public domain, those interconnections of water, parks, etc., etc. Thank you very much.